Good afternoon, folks. Look, I've been asked to come and talk about digital transformation, but in particular digital transformation and the difference between transforming in a small to medium enterprise and transforming in a large corporate entity. They both present quite different challenges, but I'll hopefully try and give you an indication of the different problems that you're going to face and how you might go about tackling them. To give you an introduction, in part you've been introduced already. From age 24, I was running my own family business. I had about 40 people working for me, and I took a 20-year-old established business and managed to double its turnover inside 18 months. How did I manage to do that? I looked at its current processes and procedures. I looked at what we were trying to do and how we would go about doing it, and fundamentally use digital technologies and platforms to drive business growth. After that, I decided that I'd move to becoming a freelance consultant. I now sort of work across more large-scale businesses, so EE being an example, Argos now an example, but I've also worked out in Belgium for a company called Belgacom. And I tend to go into these businesses with this sort of mindset. So I've used this quadrant here to try and explain who I am and how I think about problems. I very much sit in the skeptical optimist quadrant. I come into businesses, I'm very skeptical that most people have thought through problems as much as they should. And I'm pretty optimistic that we can actually solve most problems with actually little investment and just better thinking. So I very much fit into the hacker mentality. I come in, I look across multiple departments, and I pull together different technologies, tools, and processes in order to deliver business value. So I've been asked to talk about basically and answer a few key questions today. One of the questions that's been posed to me is, what's the most important priority in your digital transformation program? And digital transformation tends to miss the mark in a lot of big businesses for me, because they end up turning into digital change programs. What happens is we sit out and we start to invest in new tools and technologies, but we miss the core fundamental point. It's about cultural change. So most businesses are needing to do digital transformation because they have a disruptor in the market. People are changing the way in which they consume products and services, and the business has failed to react or failed to see that transition. So what tends to happen is businesses will go about it and say, oh, look, Uber's come into the market. How do we build a new mobile app? Or Airbnb have come into the market. How do hotels adapt to that? Or Argos are sitting there worried about Amazon, not just Amazon, but AO.com. How are they sort of approaching customer problems? And what they seem to fail to address is, in most cases, you've got a project or a program that sat within a silo within an organization. So digital within Argos is about 500 people in a 30,000 people organization. You cannot silo change with actually building new tools if you don't look at the organizational design and start to think about why you exist. So unless businesses come back to the core problem of saying, why do we exist? What problem are we here to solve? And how can we use technology to help us solve these problems faster? Then they will always miss the mark. So the challenge and the difference between, say, a large business or a small business in this case is, for me, it was relatively easy to deliver change in my family's business. I just had to get 40 people in a room every single day and beat home my vision as to why we needed to change, how that would deliver value. And I can articulate to them on whiteboards, presentations, numerous other ways in order to get that message across. It's far harder in a larger business, and it has to come top down. And unfortunately, a lot of people in leadership and CEO positions in larger businesses are not digitally orientated. They weren't around when digital was a core part of their growing up and how they experience products on a day-to-day basis. Now, that's not about trying to be unfair to them. It's just about saying that unless it comes from the top down, it will never reach operational level. So businesses really need to try and get back to the core reason of why they exist, get the CEO to articulate what that product or what that company is trying to solve for the end user. Why do they exist? We often have found companies that have grown over time, corporate entities acquire new businesses, and they get so big that they actually forget what their core purpose is. And a really good book on this, if anyone wants to sort of delve into the topic a bit further, is Simon Sinek's Start With Why. Why do you exist? And most of the big businesses, Microsoft, they started with the core concept of wanting to get a PC in every single person's house. Google want to organize the world's information. They're very clear on their mission statement, and they succeed because they have a good, solid focus as to why they exist. Moving on, next question that was posed to me is, how are you taking risks with your digital strategy? I found this a relatively tricky one to answer. The reason I found it tricky to answer is I started life in a small business. And when you work in a small business, almost every decision you make on a day-to-day basis is a risk. You don't start out the year with a financial budget. You don't start out with a set of programs that you need to deliver. You start out the year about trying to stay in business. So everything you do has to be a calculated risk. So from a young age, I was exposed to risk on a day-to-day basis. And I think the biggest risk that most large businesses face is the risk of doing nothing or not doing enough fast enough. So I wanted to try and hit home a point, which is start asking for forgiveness, not permission. So if there's anything I've brought forward when I've come to work at the companies like EE and Argos is I go away and I find people within the business to take my ideas, build them and prototype them and get them ready to ship to customers faster so that we can actually prove to our internal audience that this will deliver value. I don't go and ask for budget. I don't go and ask for permission. I ask for people's time to help me solve a problem that will solve a customer problem. And I found that to be highly effective in actually demonstrating and proving to stakeholders that this is the reason that we should make the change. This is the reason that we should do something different. I find it a far more effective tool than sitting down and trying to align 40 or 50 different people that all have a different vision. There's only one customer. That's the people paying the bills every day. Remember that when you go back to it. And unless you ship something, they don't care. People don't care how hard you try. They care about what you serve them. And I think that's where sometimes big businesses really struggle. They struggle with the ability to get products to market at a fast enough pace. Next is then, how are you tracking the effect of your digital transformation? So the core project, or the core set of things that I was delivering at EE was rebuilding their analytics setup. So I'm a big believer that absolutely everything can be measured, and if you can't measure it, you just shouldn't do it. So if you start out a set of projects and you don't define up front what your KPIs and what your success measures are, then it's almost doomed to fail, because how do you know you've reached success? So let's take a small business example in this case. When I took on my father's business, I came in and I didn't have a clue what I was doing. I was a 24-year-old guy, but he wanted me to come and lead it and run it. And I'd just never done that sort of thing before. So I went about setting up and crawling through as much information as I could about that business. I set up new P&L structures. I looked at all of our spend, and I knew things to the pound and pence as to where we spent our money and where we made our money. And the biggest black hole or black box for me was our marketing spend. We spent 15% a year of our gross annual revenue on TV and marketing. And I would sit down, in particular, TV was the one that I just couldn't get my head around. There was no tangible way, supposedly, to measure this. So I sat down with TV executives and my dad, and we were sitting down and saying, you know, what's our return on spend here? Nobody could give me a way. You know, supposedly you're just meant to buy TVs based on TVR spots and accept that that's the way that you should buy. I felt that was poor. That was a poor, way for me to try and measure effectiveness. So just to give you an indication of our TV campaign, we basically gave people a limited time discount on our product and service if they booked within a 2-week period. That was our TV campaign. I simply introduced people must send a text message in order to get the offer. Must text 633 with code, and they would get a unique response back. That gave me very, very wonderful tracking. I could now understand who was responding, how many responses I got to every single TV campaign, when they came in and what their conversion was. Why? Fundamentally, I had a digital CRM that took all those leads, automatically generated a unique code that went back to those customers' text messages, and whenever anyone booked, I was able to track the lead conversion from the actual TV campaign they responded to, combined with what their conversion and actual order spend was. And that gave us some wonderful insights. I would be buying Coronation TV spots. An entry spot and a mid spot were the exact same price, but my response rate was twice as high for a mid spot as it was an entry spot. If I actually then took that same investment and invested it in a Channel 4 6:15 spot, which was a Simpsons advert, I would get 4 times the response again for the same pound spent. But not only that, I get over 20% higher conversion and a higher spend. So when people start telling you it's difficult to measure, it's all nonsense. You just have to want to measure it. Be very clear on what your KPI is. I wanted to make return on investment. I wasn't building a brand budget. I needed to make money for this business and faster. I then used the excess money that we made to invest into other marketing to drive higher footfall. And that led to, within the 18 months, doubling that business's turnover. Very simple change. All we did was think about the problem differently. So the next one is, what is driving your transformation forwards? Pure perseverance. Transformation is not easy. You're asking people to change. You're asking people to break their habits, to think about problems differently. Expect to hear a lot of people say no. Expect a lot. And they won't say no directly. They'll nod their head, they'll smile, and they'll sound like they're in agreements in meetings and then go off and do what they've always done, because that's habitual behaviour. So to take a good example of this now in large-scale businesses, at Argos, I've built their monetization program, trying to build an internal media business for Argos. Argos is a business that's a general retailer. It operates on low margins, and it needs to find ways in which to make more profits in order to actually invest and grow its technology platforms in order to serve customers better and compete with the likes of Amazon and others. But when you start to explain to people that you're going to start using third-party adverts and promote people to potentially go to your competitors or put on second-party advertising onto your website, that's a really emotional topic. So that's taken huge amounts of perseverance, lots of A/B testing, lots of multivariate testing to prove to people beyond statistical confidence that no matter what we do and how we place certain adverts, we will make incremental revenue without impacting customer satisfaction. But even when you present people with that data, with concrete data, there's still an emotional element that you have to get over. So you have to persevere. And that perseverance at Argos, to give you tangible benefits of this, is December and peak trading period last year, we made £0 from monetization. This year it accounts for 2% of bottom line profit. That was a team of 3 people persevering. It doesn't take lots of people. It doesn't take lots of complex solutions. It's about perseverance and the willingness to drive forward. Finally then, what are the biggest blockers in your digital transformation program? Well, the biggest blocker for me is quite simple. A lack of focus, clarity, and simplicity. In a small business, it's easy to be clear with your message. There's not many people I need to serve my message to. I can get in front of them. I can articulate that vision every single day. Unfortunately, in a big business, all too often the purpose is not overly clear. Senior leadership have an idea. So take Argos, for example. They want to be a digital retail leader. What does that mean? You need to make things concrete. What's the schema that you're trying to build on? If I ask people what a Paloma is, most people couldn't tell you. If I tell them it's an oversized grapefruit, instantly it makes sense to them. Make what it is that you're trying to do concrete and clear to the end user. So internally, you need to get people to buy into your vision and strategy, what it is you're doing, why it is that you're doing it, and you need to repeat that message so often that you almost sound sick of hearing it. Why? Because it's only then that your message becomes clear to the end user as to what it is that you're trying to do internally, why it is that you're trying to change, and why the need is for change. It might, people, I think Jack Welch is really good for sort of saying this, the former CEO of General Electric. He used to say that he was sick of hearing his own voice of saying the exact same things, but it was only then that he realized people got what it is that he was trying to do, particularly if the change is quite dramatic and quite far away from the as-is behavior. So if I can try and distill that down in a different way, most people in this room might not be CEOs, you might not get to change the structure of your entire business and the vision and strategy, but you can certainly do it at team level. So at EE, we were really focused. We had a very small team. We had 5 people on our analytics team. And our simple goal was to make data simpler. We had 3 different websites, 3 different logins for 4 different tools. That's 12 different logins. We went about creating one place that people could get a single vision for data. And we built it from scratch internally and did it in 9 months. Why? We were able to stay focused on what it is that we wanted to do, what the end outcome looked like, and any of the noise around it we ignored. Now annoyed an awful lot of stakeholders, and it meant that people wanted lots and lots of reporting, but we would then hire in people. So, for example, eService wanted a dashboard. They wanted lots of stats, and they wanted lots of information. But what we did is we brought in external contractors to service that short-term need so we could stay focused on what it is that we wanted to do. So when people logged into their analytics setup, they could get a vision or a view of voice of customer, of satisfaction against journeys. People could start to do complex analysis relatively simply. Now, was it perfect? Did we land it perfectly? No, you never do. But was it significantly better than what it was when we joined? Yes. But not only that, it cost 50% less than when we joined. Because guess what? We had less licenses. We just thought about the problem again differently, and we went about solving it. So, to try and wrap up, what do I want people to hopefully take away from this? Keep focused with clear objectives that can be explained simply. Have a bias for delivery, gather learnings, and use that to inform your strategy. Measure everything to ensure you're getting return on effort. Persevere even when you want to quit, and understand that cultural change is basically the cornerstone of any digital transformation. Okay, that's it, folks.